Hello everybody, I am here with my final post as guest designer for the Counterfeit Kit Challenge project. And if you don't know what that challenge is, you can find links in the show notes to their blog. And today's challenge is based on a tic-tac-toe board. So here is the board and here are the options in the tic-tac-toe. And I went with the diagonal from top left to bottom right. So I've got a fox, some twine and labels, and some plant items to add. Now I'm going to use these photos that we took of a recent camping trip, and I'm actually going to do a 2-page spread. So if you're a double pager, this one is for you. I don't often do a lot of double page spreads, but every once in a while I will bust them out. So here I'm going through my kit for this month's challenge, and if you would like to see my kit build, you can also follow the show notes and find a link to that. Now I am pulling out of this kit a bunch of things that have to do with the woods, which is one of the themes I built this kit around to begin with. So I pulled out some wood grain papers. I pulled out, now that black chalkboard paper, while it doesn't really have to do with the woods, it does have to do with the night sky, which is where I bring in that piece for using. Because I'm doing a double page spread, I know I want this black piece to go across, but you'll notice some of those graphics are upside down and they don't quite work. We'll get to that. Here for the bottom of my page, I'm going to use this kind of plank wood grain, and I'm going to fill it in with more of this kind of natural wood grain texture. So here we are turning to that black paper, and what I've decided to do is I put the little sentiment over there that says life is a beautiful ride on the left, and I'm going to cover up that middle portion across both pages with my title block, and so that gives me a better flow to that black paper. So you can always cover up and hide elements of paper that you don't like, and that's a tip that I use often. Now I am going to bring elements from the bottom of the page up to my title block so that I have some continuity to the layout. And I use this little plaid paper, which kind of reminds me of picnic blankets, which goes along with the camping theme. So that small bit of plaid there doesn't overwhelm the page, but kind of lends to the feeling. So here I am building up my title, and I've got the word camping, and I had a hard time deciding how to split this word across the 2 pages because I wanted to split it on the syllable, but it fit better with just the first 2 letters. So I went with it. Now these photos have people's faces pointing in different directions. So I oriented them so that each face is pointing in towards the page. And I like to do that as a visual guide to design so that somebody isn't looking off into, off the edge of the page into space. And then I fill in the gaps with my smaller photos. And here I am numbering each photos. When I do pages with more photos, I tend to number each one and then write a little bit of journaling about each one. That's something that over the years I've really fallen into. And we'll get to the journaling part later. So I'm going to move on to a little bit of embellishing. I know I'm going to use that bottom open space on that blank paper for all my journaling. So my embellishing is going to go on my title block and kind of in between and around my photos. So here I am just pulling out a whole bunch of those woodland creatures and even these kind of logs that all kind of fit with this camping theme. And I will fast forward here a little bit so you don't have to watch me fuss too much. And while I'm messing around with all those embellishments, let me talk to you about that night sky. Now you see all those little stars in the upper right hand corner? I am going to sprinkle these stars all over this paper, and that is why I wanted that paper to be black. And later I am going to pull out my foil tool that I added to this kit very purposefully because I wanted to add gold foil, and that's going to be perfect to add some hand-drawn stars. Now you saw me sprinkle a little bit of gold stars, which is they're not quite sequins, but they're like sequins in my kit. So here's my gold foil, and what I do is I use my foil quill tool that's meant to go in the machine, but I just use it with a portable battery pack, and I just use it by hand. Now that works if you're doing simple things by hand. It's harder if they're a little more complex images. While I'm letting that tool get hot, I move over to some of my other embellishing, and with these wood veneers, I wanted a little more detail to them. They're kind of leaf-shaped wood veneers, but I wanted to add, this little leaf stamp, which gives them just a tad bit more dimension. So I'm going to do that with all three and add them to my layout, and then we can move on. As I finish up this wood veneer, you'll notice that one was hanging over the edge, and I'm actually going to grab a pair of scissors and just clip off the excess that's hanging over the edge. Now, I can't guarantee that'll work with all wood veneer, but I think a lot of wood veneer is soft enough that you could do that. So go ahead and give it a try if you want to hang something off the edge. So that is a bunch of embellishing in place, and I move on to one of the other elements of the challenge, which was some tags. Now, I didn't have any tags in my kit, so I'm just going to make some, not a big deal. I just cut down some pattern paper to the size that I want, and then I'm going to give myself some guide marks on the back of the pattern paper, and I just make them equidistant from the top corner edges, and that'll give me easy ways to get nice straight tag corners. And then once I have one of the pieces marked, I realize you can just stack them up and cut them all off at once. And with those little marks, I just cut between the marks, and then I've got some tag shape, add a little hole punch, and they're good to go. And by this time, my foil tool is hot. And so here I am just hand drawing some simple star shapes, just those stars that you drew as a kid. And when I'm done with those simple star shapes, I do go add and just kind of add some polka dot spots that is like stars that are much farther away that you can't recognize as stars. So it just all combines to add a nice starry sky element to this layout, which goes really well with the camping theme. And here is just a little bit of a close-up of all the shine I have going on, and then I will complete page 2 and come right back. So my foiling is done, and I turn my attention to embellishing those tags and filling in some of the gaps on my layout. Now, I really wanted to put some of these cute little woodland critters onto my layout, and I decided the tags would be a great place for some subtle stamping. And so I combine the critters with some mushrooms and a little bit of foliage to give myself a cute little woodland scene on each tag. And we'll have a close-up of those later in the still photos that I will put at the end of the video. And then I turn to my journaling once my embellishing is done, and I wish I had more of those number stickers to put as numbers for my journaling, but I don't. So what I do is I put a little piece of washi tape, an enamel dot, and then I just write with my permanent markers on top of the washi tape. And that is how I do my journaling. I add the dates of our trip, and since it was multiple days, I use my trusty date roller to add all 3 days. And then I am done. So here are some close-ups of this layout. And as we look at these closing photos, I'd like to say one last thing about when you're designing across a 2-page spread, it can be a little tricky to decide where to cut things in half. Like I cut my photo and my title block, and I use 2 things to go with that. One is how much space do I have, or in the case of my title, how much coverage did I need to get out of it? And then the second thing, especially with the photo, was not only how much coverage, but making sure I didn't cut the photo in an awkward place, like right through the middle of the vehicle that was there. So I look at those things and take those into account when I'm designing across 2 pages. I was so glad to be guest designer for September for the Counterfeit Kit Club, and I will continue playing along with them, so do join me in the future for more Counterfeit Kit videos. I really appreciate you watching. If you got something helpful out of this video, please do give it a like. That helps my channel. And if you want to catch my future videos, please subscribe.